Jnanatirandasya Ganagana Savakya Chakshurumilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Prachayami Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapatami Nabhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamya Tadati Swami Vandaham Sri Guru Sri Uttara Parakamaham Sri Guru Vaishnava Sri Rupam Sagriyatam Sangana Bhagavatam Tam Tam Sri Sarvetam Savadvitam Paridhana Sri Radha Krishna Param Samagana Ladita Sri Vishakambhita Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tarata Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabham Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakapatra Visha Kripa Sindhu Vicha Patitam Bhavanibhyo Vaishnava Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Gaura Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. From Bhagavad Gita, it is chapter 7, text 5. Can we repeat? Aparayam, Itas, Tvanyam, Prakritim, Vidi, Me, Param, Jivabhutam, Mahabaho, Yayadam, Daryate, Jagat, Aparayamitastvanyam, Prakritim Vidime Param, Jivabhutam Mahabaho, Yayadam Daryate Jagat, Aparayamitastvanyam, Prakritim Vidime Param, Jivabhuta Mahabaho, Yayadam Daryate Jagat, Aparayamitastvanyam, Prakritim Vidime Param, Jivabhuta Mahabaho, Yayadam Daryate Jagat,
Aparayamitastvanyam, Prakritim Vidime Param, Jivabhutam Mahabaho, Yayadam Daryate Jagat,
Aparayamitastvanyam, Prakritim Vidime Param, Jivabhutam Mahabaho, Yayadam Daryate Jagat. Aparayamitastvanyam, Prakritim Vidime Param, Jivabhutam Mahabaho, Yayadam Daryate Jagat.
Aparayamitastvanyam, Prakritim Vidime Param,
Prakritim Vidime Param,
Jivabhutam Mahabaho,
Jiva
Jiva Bhutam Mahabaho Yayadam Daryate Jagat Aparamitastvanyam Prakritim Vidime Param Jiva Bhutam Mahabaho Yayadam Daryate Jagat Aparamitastvanyam Prakritim Vidime Param Jiva Bhutam Mahabaho Yayadam Daryate Jagat Apara inferior Eyam this Itaha besides this two but Anyam another Prakritim energy Vidhi just trying to understand May my Param superior Jiva Bhutam comprising the living entities Mahabaho Almighty Armed One Yaya by whom Idam this Daryate is utilized or exploited Jagat the material world Translation Besides this, Almighty Armed One, there is another superior energy of mind which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. Kindly repeat. Besides these, Almighty Armed One, there is another superior energy of mind. Which comprises the living entities. Who are exploiting the resources. Of this material inferior nature. Purport. Here it is clearly mentioned that living entities belong to the superior nature or energy of the Supreme Lord. The inferior energy is matter manifested in different elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Both forms of material nature, namely gross, earth, etc., and subtle, mind, etc., are products of the inferior energy. The living entities who are exploiting these inferior energies for different purposes are the superior energy of the Supreme Lord, and it is due to this energy that the entire material world functions. The cosmic manifestation has no power to act unless it is moved by the superior energy. The living entity. Energies are always controlled by the energetic, and therefore the living entities are always controlled by the Lord. They have no independent existence. They are never equally powerful as unintelligent men think. The distinction between the living entities and the Lord is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10:87-30 as follows. Let's see what it says here. Aparimita dhruvastanubu prito yadi sarvagatas Krsna. Tarina sasyate niyamo dhruvanitārhata adyanishanyan mayantad avuchanyan tribhavet samam anujanatam jad amatam matadustatayam. O Supreme Eternal, if if the embodied living entities were eternal and all-pervading like you, then they would not be under your control. But if the living entities are accepted as minute energies of your lordship, then they are at once subject to your supreme control. Therefore, real liberation entails surrender by the living entities to your control, and that surrender will make them happy. In that constitutional position, only can they be controller. Therefore, men with limited knowledge who advocate the monistic theory that God and the living entities are equal in all respects, are actually guided by a faulty and polluted opinion. That's why I think I remember this coming from the prayers of the personified Vedas. Prayers personified Vedas is maybe one of the longest chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, of the Krishna book. The Kumara brothers are speaking prayers to the Supreme. Okay, the Supreme Lord Krishna is the only controller, and all living entities are controlled by him. These living entities are his superior entity, because the quality of their existence is one and the same with the Supreme. But they are never equal to the Lord in quantity of power. While exploiting the gross and subtle inferior entity, matter, the superior entity, the living entity, forgets his real spiritual mind and intelligence. This forgetfulness is due to the influence of matter upon the living entity. But when the living entity becomes free from the influence of the illusory material entity, he attains the stage called mukti, or liberation. The false ego, under the influence of material illusion, thinks, I am matter, and material acquisitions are mine. His actual position is realized when he is liberated from all material ideas, including the conception of his becoming one in all respects with God. Therefore, one may conclude that the Gita confirms the living entity to be only one of the multi-energies of Krishna. And when his energy is freed from material contamination, it becomes fully Krishna conscious or liberated. So the verse was Aparayam tastvanyam prakritim virime param diva bhuta mahabaho yayadam dharite jagat. Beside this, O mighty Lord Arjuna, there is another superior entity of mind, which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. So, again, previous was so yesterday we read Bhumi Rapunalo Ayakam Anubhuti Revacha Ahankariti Amipina Prakriti Rastada. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute the separate material entities down here. Then he says there's a higher entity, and that's we, the living entities. They're exploiting the resources of material inferior nature. It says also in the word to word, utilized or is utilized or exploited. In case we utilize it, we can say we utilize the false ego, because that is also part of the material element of which we are not part. The false ego is so strong. That's false ego. intelligence, mind intelligence. And then the subtle elements. The subtle elements are stronger than the gross in a way, whether the attachment is stronger. And then finally there's the false ego. Okay, mind we can somewhat understand. The working off of that we separate from the mind. Maybe we can take a little bit of a distance to our mind and watch it making noise, or in fact, take a little bit step back. The intelligence is more difficult because it's more subtle. But of course, intelligence is that what keeps the mind on track in a certain direction. Without intelligence, you go crazy. Say that was Smita said that. Craziness means that the intelligence loses the contact or the control over the mind. I actually said it, contact control. A mind without direction just goes around wildly. But then we have the intelligence, so we can understand that there's something that kind of keeps us on the track. I mean, the mind, because the mind goes back and forth during the day in various ways, and even if we may not think like something, cooking, serving, distribution, I don't know what, working, still we know I should do it. And we do it, like coming from intelligence. So that we can in one way perceive the intelligence, but then the false ego, of course, is more subtle. So that's like the binding point. It has no real substance. It's just the point we're in. The soul meets with the matter, and in one sense, like a magnet. We say magnet. The closer we come to the two poles of the magnet, the plus and the minus comes closer, the stronger the force is, and finally when they meet, then it's complete. It's very difficult to break it up. So we are a living entity, we are like the plus and the minus there. Maybe the living entity is a plus, so the false ego is a minus, and in any case it meets. It's a very strong connection. Because I'm sitting here, I'm speaking, I have so many responsibilities. And you can say yes, of course I'm a devotee, but and we still have so many, our ego, our identification tells us that we have so many responsibilities and relationships. And then the scriptures will tell us, well, all this is just illusion. Like we are meeting like on the sea in the ocean, the Öresund. When the waves brings small twigs together, and then later on the waves separate them again. And then we can say it's a powerful symbol because it just means we're coming together and then we're separated. We can't really control it. Because you can say it's okay, it's an illusion, you say, in a way. But it's a very strong illusion. Because then sometimes the question could be, should we neglect this illusory responsibility? Because provided you accept your true responsibility, you can say, you can renounce your lesser responsibilities. Or in the 10th canto, in the beginning also of the Krsna book, it says, Vasudeva is preaching to Kamsa. Kamsa is about to kill Devaki. Yes. And then Vasudeva preaching, cool down, my dear brother-in-law. In any case, we're taking birth and we're dying, don't take it so serious, all this life. But then he gives one example, is with the caterpillar. That the caterpillar moves and then it gets to the end of the leaf and then it looks for another place to hang on to and then move on. So unless it finds a better or equal or something to hold on to, it will not move forward. Okay, it's like a little bit like, oh yeah, so the point is, unless you have something else to hold on, you don't give up what you have, unless you have something else that is better. Basically, you have something else that is better. You don't move out of a house until you, usually, because you can be kicked out of the house also, so you haven't paid your rent, and now you're fired, no. So, but then usually it is that you move out of a house to move into some other house that is better, or some another flat or something that fits better or something. So when you find a better option, then you move out of the other situation. So in that way we can say, moving out of the responsibilities of material existence. We shouldn't renounce responsibility, but we should find our real responsibility. So be responsible. So responsible spiritually, materially speaking, and spiritually speaking. If you practice in the one field, you can easily apply it in the other field also. But if you're not used to be responsible or dutiful, then it's difficult to apply it on the spiritual life also, because you don't have the habit is not there. Okay, so in that way, unless we get something better, when we got in something better, then we can give up the inferior. In one sense, we could say that we should give up the inferior. At the same time, the one thing maybe doesn't exclude the other from a practical point of view. Okay, so the mind, the false ego, the feeling of that this is me and this is my family and this is my responsibilities. Okay, if we're married, married. If there's a child, then there's something that ties together very strongly. So that's yes, false ego. When we bring brought together, there's a very strong connection. Okay, so but then this is still that false ego. That is, we can say, what is spiritual. My relationships are spiritual. Maybe, well, in one sense, something keeps us together, but ultimately the relationship becomes spiritual when it's connected with Krishna. So we are in this. The point is the false ego, very subtle, but it's still as a material element described here, coming from the Lord. And we say once it's coming from the Lord, and therefore so powerful. But then Krishna says that there is a superior, but there is even more. Actually, in one sense, the living entity is described as a superior. So in one sense, the living entity is so superior. They are more powerful. But then how can it be that this superior, powerful energy can be controlled by this inferior energy? The Prabhupada made an example in Hamburg when he was there in 1969. Keep that in mind. 1969. Okay, September. I could almost have been there, but Krishna didn't. Wasn't the plan. And again, I'd seen the devotees there and came back actually just before the school started in the end of August to see if I saw these monks again, but I didn't see them. Again, maybe just as well, because I would have done something crazy. But Prabhupada was there, okay. And he took morning walks with his disciples there, and in Hamburg is Halmstad, port town. Right? Well, Copenhagen is not so much of a port town, it's not in the same way as Hamburg. And okay, so there was walking, and then he was seeing